Welcome back to Local News Live. As you know, we've been covering the aftermath of the beating and the arrest of Tyre Nichols. And of course, the 29-year-old man had died 3 days after being arrested. We want to get a little bit more perspective. There's a lot happening in this case even now. And so let's bring in Joshua Ritter, who is a criminal defense attorney in Los Angeles and a former LA County prosecutor. You know the kind of things that we are trying to figure out here. So we're happy to talk to you and kind of find out what your thoughts are. You know, there have been, of course, the 5 officers who have been charged in this case, but now other people are being disciplined. 3 MTs have been fired. Could they be charged with something in connection with the death of Tyre Nichols?
Absolutely. I think that's what's being indicated by the DA's office, is that they're looking into everyone who was involved. And it's not so much the actions that people took, but the actions that they did not take that they should have taken. And I think that's important, especially when it comes to medical emergency personnel. Were they standing around where they could have been more involved in perhaps doing something at that time to have saved this man's life at a later time? The other thing that they've pointed out is that they're looking to anyone who is involved in the compiling or creation of documentation of this event. To me, that reads, if I'm reading through the lines properly, that they're looking at how the police reports were compiled. What were put into those reports? Do they believe that those reports were forthcoming and honest about how the events actually played out? Those could lead to charges themselves.
And of course, now there's that horrific video. It's heartbreaking, heart-wrenching to watch. But of course, if the documentation is different than that video, then there's certainly some culpability there as well. So what kind of charges could someone face who should have done something but didn't?
Well, it could be as serious as, charging them under this kind of new theory that they have in Memphis, that they could be held responsible for the death. Could they also be charged with second-degree murder or aiding and abetting, or somehow acting as a person who's aiding and abetting after the fact? I don't know. I mean, they could get as serious as that. And then certainly with these other charges about, if, like you pointed out, if the police reports do not comport with what's on that videotape, and we've all seen it, and it's shocking, and you would expect that the police reports would reflect that. If they do not, you might even be seeing something like perjury charges.
Interesting. The 5 officers who were fired and then quickly charged, what do you think? I mean, I know you don't have a crystal ball, but you know these types of cases, and you've certainly prosecuted many cases. What do you think is going to happen with those? What do you think the prosecutor will focus on?
What I saw on that video was 5 grown men who are large and who are armed and who have been trained and should have known better. And then you've got one individual, and I don't care what kind of arguments you want to make about him not being compliant or him not following orders. That at a certain point appears to just be a flat out beatdown. And I think that's what the prosecution concentrates on. There are so many people involved in law enforcement who do a good job. They risk their lives every single day. And to see this kind of conduct from people who wear the badge like that is just so disheartening to all of those who do go out, like I said, every single day and participate in this kind of work that keeps us all safe. And it's just awful to see, again, another case that calls that all into question.
Absolutely, I have to agree. With the video that damning, Joshua, is it, do you think that they'll get a conviction? Is it easier to get a conviction? Or is there any way that these officers don't get convicted?
It's the video, I think, is very convincing. And so I think the prosecutors have a lot of their job laid out before them just by the mere fact that they have that videotape, and 2 angles of it, by the way, too. But I think it's also should not lull them into a false sense of this case being a slam dunk, because I've seen it before in the past. Sometimes videotape can tell a different story than initially you might think when you're first taking a look at it. I don't think that'll be the case here, but a smart defense attorney can chop that video up by split second, every single movement. And before you know it, jurors don't quite know what they're seeing. Whereas all of us at first blush, like I said, take a look at that and it just looks like an awful assault.
What stands out about this case most to you?
Well, I think again, I go back to why did this need to happen? This seems like so avoidable. I mean, here you have a person who no one's saying he was armed. I realized that at one point he tried to flee from police, but people do that all the time, and we're going to have to come up with a better way of handling these situations. Now, you have these officers, none of whom are being claimed to be rookies. They should have been trained. In fact, they were part of an elite unit that should have been trained in exactly these types of situations. And to have such a breakdown in protocol to the point that I believe what I'm seeing there is criminal conduct that leads to a man's death. It's just everything that we're trying to do with modern day policing should be trying to avoid that. And it's so unfortunate and tragic that it ended up in the results that it did.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your insight. I know you bring something special to this broadcast because you know what you're talking about. Again, a former LA County prosecutor and a current defense attorney, criminal defense attorney in Los Angeles. Joshua Ritter, we thank you for your time.
Thank you.
You got it. And you are watching Local News Live. We will be right back.